It was supposed to be a routine town hall. Karoline Leavitt, the sharp-tongued political firebrand and rising conservative star, had fielded hundreds of questions before, from journalists, opponents, and everyday voters. But nothing could have prepared her for what happened in a quiet New Hampshire gymnasium that Thursday afternoon. From the back of the room stood up a boy, maybe 12, no older than 13, dressed in a hoodie and sneakers, holding a legal pad thicker than some law school textbooks. His voice was calm, polite, but carried the confidence of a seasoned litigator. What came out of his mouth next stopped everyone cold. It was supposed to be a routine town hall. Karoline Leavitt, the sharp-tongued political firebrand and rising conservative star, had fielded hundreds of questions before, from journalists, opponents, and everyday voters. But nothing could have prepared her for what happened in a quiet New Hampshire gymnasium that Thursday afternoon. From the back of the room stood up a boy, maybe 12, no older than 13, dressed in a hoodie and sneakers, holding a legal pad thicker than some law school textbooks. His voice was calm, polite, but carried the confidence of a seasoned litigator. "Miss Leavitt," he began, "if the First Amendment protects free speech, how do you reconcile that with laws restricting hate speech? Laws that, in some cases, seem to criminalize expression rather than action." A murmur ran through the room. Karoline raised her eyebrows. This wasn't the typical "why did you vote for X?" question. She gave a measured reply, citing national security, social cohesion, and legal precedent. But the boy wasn't finished. "Respectfully," he continued, flipping to a marked page in his notes, "in Brandenburg versus Ohio, 1969, the Supreme Court clearly stated that speech cannot be prohibited unless it's directed to inciting imminent lawless action and is likely to incite or produce such action. So wouldn't laws that criminalize general hate speech fail that test?" Now the room was dead silent. A local reporter's pen froze mid-scribble. Karoline glanced around and smiled tightly. "And what's your name?" she asked. "Eli," he said. "Eli Masters. I want to be a constitutional lawyer when I grow up. But I figured I'd start now." A few chuckles broke the tension, but Karoline was already leaning forward, intrigued. This kid wasn't just quoting cases, he understood them. "All right, Eli," she said, "let's talk precedent." What followed wasn't a debate. It was a legal duel, fast-paced, fiercely intelligent, and somehow still respectful. Karoline challenged Eli on nuance, public policy implications, and the limits of absolutism. Eli countered with landmark cases, quotes from dissenting justices, and a fluency with constitutional law that left even seasoned lawyers in the audience speechless. By the end of the exchange, half the room was taking notes. As the event wrapped up, Karoline approached Eli in the hallway. "You're going places," she said. "So are you," he replied. "Just maybe with a little more push from kids like me." They shook hands. What neither of them knew at the time was that a video of their exchange, posted that evening by a student, would rack up 3.7 million views in 2 days. Comment sections exploded. Lawyers, professors, pundits, and politicians all had something to say about the boy who debated Karoline Leavitt. But that wasn't the most surprising part. Because what happened next hasn't been made public yet. By Monday morning, Eli Masters had gone from anonymous 8th grader to the subject of a CNN morning panel. Who is this kid? And how is he quoting Brandenburg better than half of Congress? Within 72 hours, law schools were trying to track him down. Harvard Law retweeted the video with the caption, "We'll save him a seat." But the media frenzy wasn't what changed things. It was what came in the mail that Wednesday, a thick manila envelope addressed to Eli, postmarked from Washington, D.C. Inside was a handwritten letter. No name, no return address, but whoever wrote it knew their stuff. It read, Eli, the Constitution has survived wars, corruption, and change, but it may not survive apathy. Keep asking questions. I've attached something you won't find in school. Study it, then decide what kind of lawyer you want to be. A friend. Tucked behind the letter was a faded photocopy of a classified legal memo from the early 2000s. Top secret, barely legible watermark. The title, Doctrine of Selective Liberty Internal Briefing, Draft Only. Eli read it, once, then again. His heart raced. It outlined a shadow legal theory, one suggesting that certain constitutional rights could be suspended without formal repeal under conditions of cultural emergency. There were handwritten annotations in the margins. One note circled a paragraph and simply said, used during Patriot Act negotiations. Never disclosed. That night, Eli didn't sleep. He pulled out his legal pad, started writing. Not a summary, not notes. Plan. Meanwhile, across the country, Karoline Leavitt was sitting in a studio, preparing for her Fox News segment, when her chief of staff walked in, pale. You need to see this. He handed her a printout. It was a forum thread from an underground legal network. The headline, Eighth grader might have just uncovered a forgotten legal loophole that could rewrite civil liberties. Karoline froze. There, in black and white, was a partial scan of the memo. A memo she had seen once years ago during a congressional internship. One she was told to never mention. She looked up slowly. Who leaked this? She asked. No one knows, but people are saying it came from New Hampshire. From a kid. Her eyes narrowed. Eli Masters. She didn't smile this time. Thursday morning, Eli didn't go to school. His mom, a single nurse working double shifts, thought he was just under the weather. But Eli had already slipped out, legal pad in his backpack, and boarded the 7:10 a.m. train to Boston. He wasn't running away. He was running toward something. On the train, he studied the memo again. Every line, every annotation. He was beginning to see a pattern. Phrases that matched obscure legal doctrines he'd only read about in academic blogs. The doctrine of selective liberty wasn't just theoretical. It had been implemented. Quietly, temporarily, then buried. And someone wanted him to find it. That someone, whoever had sent the letter, had opened a door. The question was, did they expect him to walk through it? Meanwhile, in D.C., Karoline was no longer smiling on the air. In a closed-door meeting at the Capitol, she sat across from two men in suits she didn't recognize. No badges, no agency listed. But the way the room fell silent when they entered spoke volumes. Miss Leavitt, the older one began, we're not here to ask questions. We're here to give you an opportunity to help us contain a situation. The boy? She said flatly. The boy? The other nodded. And more importantly, what he stumbled onto. They slid a photo across the table. It was Eli standing at a bookstore in Cambridge the day before, reading from a vintage copy of the Federalist Papers. Karoline's heart skipped. You've been tracking him? We track anything that could become structurally destabilizing. He's a kid. No, ma'am. He's a vector. They opened a second folder. Inside was a document stamped, Eyes Only. Title, Civic Literacy Threat Index, Code Name, Mercury Rising. She glanced up. You actually have a name for this? We do. And whether you believe in what he's found or not, it's out there now. What matters is what happens next. So what do you want from me? The man smiled coldly. We want you to get him talking, publicly, on your terms, and then help us reframe the narrative. Back in Boston, Eli stepped out of the train station and into the buzz of downtown. His destination: the office of Professor Ronald Sykes, constitutional scholar, former federal advisor, and one of the few legal minds alive who had once argued before the Supreme Court on matters of national secrecy. He had emailed Sykes the night before. The professor's reply was brief. Come alone and bring the memo. Don't forward this message. Eli reached the office and knocked. The door creaked open slowly. But it wasn't Professor Sykes who answered. It was a woman, mid-30s, smartly dressed, with sharp eyes and a leather satchel. Eli Masters? She said. He hesitated. Yes. She stepped aside. Professor Sykes couldn't make it. I'm his assistant, but I've been expecting you. Eli's grip tightened on his backpack. Do you work for him or someone else? She smiled, not kindly. Both. The woman led Eli into the office. Everything inside felt staged. No signs of a working professor, just books neatly aligned, not a speck of dust out of place. She motioned toward a chair. You brought the memo? Eli hesitated. What do you want it for? She sat across from him, calm as glass. To protect you. He pulled the folded paper from his backpack, but didn't hand it over. Who are you really? She leaned forward. Someone who used to believe in the rules. Then I saw who wrote them. Before Eli could respond, the door creaked again, and Professor Sykes himself walked in. Enough, he said, voice low and tired. He deserves the truth. Eli stood up. What truth? Sykes looked at the boy, really looked at him. That memo? It's not a warning. It's a test. A test. It was leaked on purpose. Years ago, a group of constitutional advisors wrote it to see who would notice the cracks, who could still think freely in a system built to distract. Eli felt his throat tighten. You're saying I was meant to find it? The woman nodded. You passed. Passed what? Sykes stepped closer. The system isn't broken, Eli. It's adaptive. When it finds someone who can't be controlled, it does one of two things: recruits them or buries them. Eli's voice was barely a whisper. And I get to choose? No, Sykes said. You already chose when you showed up today. There was a long silence. Then the woman slid a folder across the table. Inside, a full scholarship offer to an elite private academy with early admission to Yale Law. Future. Path. You can take this, she said. Build your name. Work the system from the inside. Eli stared down at it. The weight of everything, the attention, the danger, the responsibility, settled on his shoulders. Then he looked up. Or. Sykes's voice was quiet. Or you disappear. Keep digging. But you won't be protected. No headlines. No safe passes. Eli closed his eyes for a moment. Thought of his mom. Thought of the Constitution. Thought of the people who didn't even know what was being taken from them. Slowly, legally. When he opened them, his voice was clear. I'll disappear. The woman's eyes widened, but she said nothing. Sykes nodded solemnly. 1 year later, a new username appears on a restricted legal forum. Liberty Vector 13 has joined the discussion. Attached to the post is a redacted version of a memo, not the one from before, but something deeper, untouched, unseen. The comment reads, "Rights are not lost all at once. They're signed away, footnote by footnote. Stay awake." Somewhere in New England, a boy walks home quietly under falling leaves, no longer just a kid with questions. He's something else now. A whisper in the system, a ripple in the Constitution, a ghost with a purpose.